Did you see you made LinkedIn?
Oh, I didn't see that
Yeah.
yet. I reposted it.
Did you? Yeah. So it's kind of weird. I'm talking to her, but the mic is, she's right here. So Kayla, as you all know, we do this selfie at the end of these.
Okay.
And Kayla loves the selfies. So I just invited her up. So maybe we'll do that again.
The picture.
So, you know,
Nice.
favoritism. Okay. All right. So a couple of announcements before we get started, maybe just one. Tuesday, we're going to be talking about the New Venture Ideation Project, so you don't want to miss that because I'll go over some details. I've had a few questions on email, so I think that might be helpful for some of you. Plus, we'll walk through the first couple of steps in case you have not done that yet. But I think that'll be helpful. So Tuesday, that's what we'll do. Okay, so today, we've talked a lot about coffee shops, right? We've talked about there's opportunity there. Nothing's ever easy, right?
True.
But so today we have Tiara Hicks, who owns Rosebud Coffee Shop. How many of you have been to Rosebud? Yeah? Yeah, so you know where it is, over that direction. And she'll talk about the coffee shop. She'll talk about her other, you know, her I don't know if we call it the main gig or it's one of the gigs, right? So
It is, yes.
It's how we punish ourselves.
Uh-huh.
So, but it's good. All right. So, welcome.
Thank you.
I guess maybe just start off by sharing your journey and how did you get here? Just some of the key things from your mind.
Yeah, so I'll give you the high level view. Nobody wants the whole story. But I was born and raised in Muncie, Indiana. I wanted to get the heck out of here. I wanted a bigger city. I wanted more opportunities. And I thought that I was going to get all of those experiences by moving to Indianapolis. So I moved to Indianapolis for 10 years. Married, started my family, had my kiddos and all of that. And that is where I started my professional career in human resources. So I went to Indiana Wesleyan, I got my degree in management, and I got an MBA with a focus in human resources, and I did that. But I always wanted to own my own business. I just didn't want the risk associated with it. And then by going into human resources, I realized there is no security when you work for someone else. There were many times I had to do a layoff or I let people go. They weren't expecting it. They didn't have a plan B. So this idea of security by working for someone else was kind of a false that I had built up in my head to say that that's more security than owning my own business. So I guess I would say I then decided to do a hybrid. So I always wanted to own my own business. And as a kid, I did dog grooming. I did all kinds of like side hustles and babysitting and, you know, not really thinking that that was going to be my path, but it was just always a passion. It was something I wanted to do. So then in human resources, as I progressed in my career and went to work for different organizations, I had an opportunity to travel. And I would always go into coffee shops and I would take pictures of things that I saw that I liked or menu ideas or engaging and interacting with people. And there was something fascinating to me about creating a space that brings people together. And I had a boss in my HR world that told me once one of my skill sets and something I did really, really well was I built teams and I brought people together. And so then it started kind of clicking like why I like this so well and this is what I want to do here. And I always say I think two things facilitate conversation really well. It's alcohol and coffee. And I am not a night owl. I go to bed at like 9:30. So coffee was going to need to be that path. And in my HR career, I started bringing a coffee pot into my office, and like it was an Nespresso machine, and inviting people to come in and to chat with me, and we would call it Coffee with Tiara, and people would just open up and talk, and I was able to overcome barriers in the HR world by having this connection and this conversation and building relationships. And so COVID happened. We all went remote. I got tired of only talking to my family and coworkers, and I decided to start pursuing this coffee shop idea a little bit more. And I went and looked at a couple of locations, and then I had an opportunity where Ted Baker at the Innovation Center said to me, hey, I think that there's an opportunity for you to bring your idea to the south side of Muncie. They're looking for something like you. How about you present your idea to the 812 Coalition and see what they think? So 4 different groups presented coffee shop or cafe style options to them, and they selected me. And so that began my journey. And I didn't have money set aside. I wasn't really ready. I had kids. It was COVID. Like, I wasn't in a place necessarily where it was like, yeah, let's do this. But what my philosophy always is I'm going to keep knocking on doors until I find one that's locked. And then I'll decide to turn and look for another door, or I see that maybe that's the end of my path. So I just kind of keep walking down a path and seeing what opportunities come up. And that's how I eventually did it.
I love the coffee with Tiara. That's good. But you can put your own stamp on a situation, and people responded to it.
Yeah.
So, and relations, it's all about relationships.
It is.
So, and that's interesting. So I didn't realize you were kind of competing for the coffee shop opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Thanks.
What have been some of your most significant challenges? Maybe was there one that was really tough, and how did you overcome that?
I would say in the very beginning, you've never opened a business before, and it was probably to my benefit that I was naive, because that kept me going and kept trying and pursuing, and I didn't let some of the obstacles mean stop. But what happened to me is I started working with the Small Business Administration. They gave me a coach, and he said, okay, you need a business plan. And I'm like, oh, what? Okay. So I put that together, right? And then I'm in a building that used to be a bank. And it is not as easy as you would think to convert a bank to a restaurant or a cafe. I had to, run plumbing and do all these other things. Well, in the middle of this, here come COVID. So the prices of everything, when I originally budgeted, when I got estimates, they doubled. My electrician bill doubled. All of my expenses doubled. Suddenly, everybody was putting service fees on being a distributor, getting supplies. So from the beginning, my business plan financially just kind of blew up, and I had to learn to pivot and navigate. And so one of the things that I did, because I told you in the beginning I had no money set aside to do this, was I decided I wanted to repurpose and reuse. I thought that was a really cool concept and a really good idea, but it really was because I had no money. So all of the kitchen table, like all the tables in Rosebud are kitchen tables, and that's twofold. One, no money, needed to be able to fill a coffee shop with seats inexpensively. And two, at my grandparents' house, my grandpa would always invite anybody who came over, it didn't matter what you came over for, to come inside and have a cup of coffee, and you sat around the table. And there was this relationship, community, good feeling that came over you. It like immediately, if I sit you down at a desk or a boardroom table, there's this stiffness, there's this formality to it. But if I sit you down at a kitchen table and I start to have a conversation with you, no matter what I'm going to talk to you about, you're just a little more at ease, and it just automatically builds. And I realized people coming into a coffee shop, they're uncomfortable, they don't know what to order, they don't want to look dumb in front of everybody. And so I just wanted to try to create that, bring it down a level, make it a little bit more approachable and easy. But then it just worked out to my benefit from a budget standpoint. I mean, it's 1,800 square feet to be able to fill that space pretty inexpensively. So that was kind of the strategy. So you just pivoted. And again, I think it was more that I didn't have experience, so I was like, oh, let's overcome this challenge.
Yeah, as opposed to someone maybe who had come from that industry, they might have said, well, they might have in their not been that creative. We might have just institutional, let's do it how we've always done it.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because the first time I walked into Rosebud, I thought, this is so cool. It's homey. It feels like home,
Yeah.
and which would be warm and welcoming to people. So it's also a good lesson in you had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, I can't do it, you creatively problem solve.
There was so many times, I mean, through opening a shop, getting funding, where I would feel like the door was locked and I had to make a decision. Do I scrap this whole thing or do I get creative and at one time, from a funding perspective, I was up for a Muncie industrial revolving loan. And it was a loan that Delaware County was offering new businesses. And it was really targeted towards our industry, which was manufacturing. And I'm not manufacturing. So here I am trying to convince these guys to give me an opportunity and a pretty reasonable loan to be able to do this. And they said no. They said there was absolutely no way they would do this. And I'm crying and I'm walking around my porch and I'm like, is this the locked door that just shuts it all down? Or, do I need to give it one last effort? And I ended up calling Ted Baker at the Innovation Center and saying, hey, you believed in me, you thought I could do this. Here's my obstacle. What do I need to do? Well, he happened to have a friend and he called that friend who then called another person who then sent a new message to the group of people approving the loan, and they looked at it from a different perspective, called and apologized, and ended up offering me the loan. So there were lots of times, and it happens every day to all of us when you guys are going to school or you don't do well on a test and you think, shit, is this my major or do I need to pivot and look to do something different? And I think that it's knowing when you give up that you've exhausted your efforts. You did try. That's what I needed to give myself permission to walk away. I needed to know that I tried everything. And if I hadn't tried everything, then I needed to try everything and then I could decide. That's kind of my philosophy.
That's fascinating that that group turned that around because that has to be pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, like from a pride and ego standpoint that they would acknowledge, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about leadership. I mean, your profession is the HR field.
Mm-hmm.
You also own a small business, so you've seen it from both angles. The first thing, our class takes the ELI assessment, and we talked a little bit more about it in the car on the way over.
Mm-hmm.
But you have kind of a blended style, preferred builder, but also a little scientist, so more on the details, which we're hearing that in some of this conversation, right? Remember I said there's clues, people will give you clues. And so I guess the first question is, how well do you think that describes you? I'll let you take a stab at that.
Yeah, so the first thing I did when I got in the car was ask for clarification because it had been a little while since I had taken the assessment. And I would say absolutely. I've already shared I'm not super risk. I'm not a big risk taker, but I will take a risk when it has limited impact. So I say to everybody all the time that, if the decision I needed to make was going to impact my children negatively, it's a hell no right away. But if it's something that I feel like the impact is just going to be centralized to just me or something that I can navigate through, then I'm much more willing to pursue it a little bit further. But I pursue it with gathering information. So we also have talked about a couple of other coffee shops and locations, and I'm looking at traffic counts, and I'm looking at other businesses that are around me and what are their hours. And so I'm open to opportunities, but I do it with that education and information. So there's a naiveness to never doing it before, but I was not uneducated in what I was walking into. So I think that that's a little bit of that combination of what my assessment said.
And if you didn't have that, because good entrepreneurs mitigate risk.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't have that kind of investigative leaning, you would want to complement with someone who did. So
Yeah.
someone would want to work with you if they didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You would be a good asset to them, a good partner.
Yeah, my good partner is the bigger picture thinker, the dreamer. I can get stuck in the details and then or get challenged by the obstacles and not remember or see the bigger picture as to why. So yeah, some of my mentors are the bigger picture, and I'm the details and the fine layer beneath. So yeah, you definitely want to surround yourself. You also want to surround yourself with people who have different personalities than you. It's very easy when you're hiring, and this comes from my HR side of things. I love people wired like me. It is easy. I can talk to you. I know what you're going to more than likely show up like. You're predictable to me. It's a little bit of comfort level in that. But where I see teams really excel and grow is when they challenge themselves and they're not like-minded and they balance it out. You got a dreamer and you got a detailed person, because that detailed person can get stuck and never get things moving forward. And that dreamer can go create all kinds of chaos because they didn't put any substance behind them. So marrying those two personalities together, you get quite the combination. So, that is a pitfall that I'm mindful of, is that I don't only hire people like me, because a whole bunch of me's would just be chaos inside of anything. So it's how do I balance that out, along the way, and hiring different personalities in the coffee shop, and then figuring out how to play to their strengths and what works well with individuals. When they can tap into that natural wiring or tendencies, that's when they're going to excel as well. And I do that in work. I'm a VP of human capital for a consulting organization with about 200 employees. And we're in India, Illinois, and Indiana, but we're a remote workforce, so they're spread out everywhere. And we use predictive index to be able to look at things, but we form committees, and I pull those profiles to look at, okay, is this committee well balanced, or am I going to just get a lot of uh-huhs and yes men and women and agree with me, or is somebody in this group going to challenge the thought process, and I would rather be challenged internally before it goes externally. So surrounding yourself with somebody who will throw up those obstacles or raise those questions. In our families, a lot of times they're doing it because they don't want to see us fail. And our parents tend to be that, are you sure about that? Have you thought about this? And it's so frustrating when you just want the support and you just want them to dream with you. But what they're asking, if you can stop and think about it and have answers and responses, it prepares you for others outside of the world that's going to do it. So I always say, challenge me inside. That way my outside is the best projection that it can be.
Yeah, a lot of good wisdom there. It's easy to hire clones of you.
Yes.
And but it's not super effective. Now you need some of you, probably, because you can't do it all. But you need people with different perspectives, and that's why we do assessment tools in this class, and to help you really own the things you're naturally good at, you like to do, you get fulfillment from. Let other people do the stuff that they're good at and they get fulfillment from.
Yeah, and that's hard when you're starting out, because you have no money, you don't have a team, you're doing everything. But along the way, if you can start to go, I really hate the social media posting and management, right? Then you prioritize, okay, when I can afford to get some help, this is the first thing I'm going to give to them or to hire somebody to do. You have the vision, you know what you want it to look like, but you're not the best individual to be able to execute. And so it's important to have that awareness, and then start to build the little list of the things that this is somebody I'll hire to have them do this, or I'll keep this on my plate, because you can't always do it all. You can't continue to always be that one and only contributor.
That's great advice. You mentioned mentors. could you talk a little bit about how that's played out for you, the benefits? What should they be thinking about as they look at a mentoring but also support network?
Yeah, I'm somebody that always has to learn the hard way and usually alone. So it's not easy for me to ask for help or depend on someone else. And I didn't feel like, my parents growing up, my dad worked in a factory here in Muncie and my mom was a nurse. And my mom was the first woman to go to college and I was the second in our family. So it wasn't, I used to be like, man, you don't have the friends to introduce me to connect me in the network. And I didn't feel like, growing up, I'd really made those strong connections and network. And then I go to Indy and then I stay working in Indy, but I moved back here again. And I always felt this like I didn't have my core group of people. And it wasn't until I started the entrepreneurial journey that I feel like I started to meet people and then, kind of build that community or that network. So, I don't have a formalized board of advisors that I go, hey, I'm thinking about making a big menu change. Let's sit down and talk through this. But I have people that I feel like are really good and much smarter than me in certain areas. And I selectively pick up the phone and call those people to pick their brain or run an idea past them and ask what that looks like. So I would say my group has formed organically, but when I was sitting on the other side of it looking, I saw that as an obstacle or a barrier. Like my mom couldn't introduce me to these people. My dad couldn't make this introduction. We didn't have the community connections. And in a small community, those are super important. Instead, I had to kind of organically navigate and build those. And so then my goal is to help other people not have to learn the hard way and maybe open a few doors for them so that it's not such an obstacle or a barrier. So I guess to summarize that answer for you, you can't do it alone. You absolutely need a network of people, and don't let the lack of it be a barrier to moving things forward. You'll meet people, you'll have those opportunities, and people come and go in our lives. I'm sure you all have friends, even from high school, that like they were your go-to person, but now you're 6 hours away from each other, you're both busy and you're not as available. So you've had to find somebody else that shares a perspective that can contribute. So it continues to evolve and grow. And I think that's really important. And it also adapt it with your needs and your changes.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to reach out.
Yep.
You have to make yourself vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you did with Ted.
Yep.
Just ask, and it doesn't always lead to good things, but
Right.
often it will. So it's really good advice. I know generationally it can be hard to reach out, and you said one thing. Pick up the phone, which that ages us a little bit, but you do still pick these up too. I think that phrase came from landline, but
Yeah.
whatever that is. But you do call people, like literally talk to people, meet
Yeah.
with them, not just texting or whatever. So.
Oh, I text now, but the relationship is in place so that I can ping a quick message to them and get a response because of making that investment in our relationship before. Yeah.
Talk about how your values, your personal mission, purpose, how that's driven your style, or maybe how your style as a business owner and your leadership style, how that's kind of played into like how you run your business, how you do your business.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is I wished I would have made more decisions based on my values. Instead, I sometimes fall into the trap of people pleasing, or here's what the trend is on social media and now I need to offer it, and it would go against what my original plan was, and I allowed that to happen because I didn't always have it defined, and I wasn't always allowing my values to dictate or drive my decision making. And I think I would push myself to a certain point, and then I would double check with myself and go, no, if this isn't what you want to do, or it is what you want to do. So I think if I could have defined my values better in the beginning of the process, I could have relied on them more. But because I didn't clearly define them for myself, I allowed myself to kind of, navigate around them a little bit. So I do think that's super important. And I can share that, in my professional world, we just paid a consultant to come in for 4 months and work with our leadership team. And it was all about defining our values and then filtering our decision making in alignment with those values. So it is save yourself the money in consulting later and, check in with yourself, but give yourself permission to change. Because what my value was 10 years ago and what my value is now, it has changed, And so I think that it's important to give yourself that permission to evolve, but kind of check in and do that touch base with yourself. But yeah, I would say my core value in the beginning was the hospitality aspect, wanting to bring people together. And that was really, really important for me. But realizing I can't be the choice for everyone. And, I shared in the car, there's been 7 coffee shops open since I did 5 years ago. And I have a moment of panic every time they open. And I'm like, oh, shit, what is this going to do to me now? And what pivot do I need to make to stay competitive? And what do I need to do? But if I fall back to remembering my original reason was bringing people together, removing barriers, giving people a really good quality cup of coffee, and making sure that I'm creating that experience for them, then I don't have anything to worry about. It's kind of your check base with it.
So we, coming up in this class, we'll do a passion, interest, skills, purpose, exercise, and it's funny because this is a 2-guest week, and we were talking about how take advantage of it now because it's a great exercise now, and it'll get you in a direction, like you'll start to chase things that are important to you. But it also gives you the skill to self-examine now and the tools for later, because it will evolve.
Absolutely. And I would get really frustrated when I didn't know it, and it was very easy to be like, I don't know, it doesn't matter, put it over to the side. But challenge yourself to work through it a little bit, and it can feel kind of hokey and it can feel whatever, but they're inside of you and you know what they are. It's just naming them and being able to then hold yourself accountable to kind of checking into it. And again, permission to change. The entire process, from opening a business to a location to any decision you make. Permission to change your mind or say, you know what, that's not as good of an idea as I thought it was going to be, and now I'm going to do this. I think that's super important.
We talked before class, and the group knows, one of the mantras of this class is feedback is a gift. And just being open to what are people saying, what are you hearing, what are they directly telling you, or people speak with their I guess we used to say wallets or billfolds, but people do speak with their money.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yeah. And I have to admit, one of the biggest stressors I got talked into in the beginning was a comment box. Oh my God. I hated that comment box. Like every time a comment went into it, I cringed internally with like, oh my God, what are they not going to like now? And still, if I'm at the shop and somebody stops me and says, are you the owner? I hesitantly say yes, because I know they're about to give me a comment or feedback, and I'm not always in a place to receive it or respond to it. So it's still not a comfort zone to get the feedback, but again, I think it's a challenge to yourself to put yourself out there. And I understand too that I don't have to change just because I got feedback in it. You know, like my mom would always say to me, like, you don't listen because you didn't do what it was she was telling me I needed to be doing. And I would say, no, I heard you. I made a different choice. And so I think that that's part of it. Because even if you get rid of the comment box, they'll DM you, they'll send you Facebook messages, they'll email you, they'll stop you in person. The feedback is going to come no matter what. It's just figuring out what do you do with it? How do you filter it? And then how much of an impact you let it have on you, you know? And again, if you've got those values in place to kind of check it against, or a business plan, if we're not calling it a value, and saying, you know, this is what we wanted to serve, this is how we wanted to serve our guest. Does this align with that? Am I just keeping up with the Joneses and trying to be competitive like dirty sodas? And, you know, I keep kicking that around and I get pressure to serve sodas in general, being in my location. You know, you just kind of check it with what you want to do, and sometimes you try it and sometimes you don't, but the feedback is going to be there no matter what, positive and negative. And there are going to be some people who you just cannot please and will not make happy. So again, figuring out like what you're willing to do and then letting it go and just being at peace with that.
Yeah, you get to decide.
Yeah.
When we say feedback is a gift, we're not saying you act on every piece of it. Maybe it's a small part of it. Maybe you ignore that one because it just isn't relevant, or they don't have the whole context of what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to act on all of it. And that's not what I'm trying to convey. But you always listen and you always take it in and you bounce it off of other people. And if you're hearing it a lot,
Yeah.
then it maybe becomes a tougher decision, even if you want to stand your ground, like on the trends or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, always an interesting topic of work-life integration, work-life balance, and you have a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like you're good at it? What do you think?
I feel like this is my broken record moment. Because whenever I talk to anybody about owning your own business, I always say to them, entrepreneurship allows for flexibility. It does not allow for freedom. And maybe it's the way I run my businesses. Maybe it's the choices that I make, and maybe somebody else is actually able to get freedom. But I'm too involved and I care too much, and it means a lot to me. And I still go to my coffee shop 3 to 4 days a week, and I have the opportunity to work remotely, and I have a professional career and I have to travel for it and, you know, do other things, but I still try to keep a pulse and know that I'm there to support them. And so I may not be there all day, but I'll go in the morning and just kind of check on things. So it allows the ability to be flexible in the fact that if I need to step out for an appointment during the day, I can do that and go back to it, where some 8 to 5 jobs, you know, don't allow for that kind of thing. But I tell everybody that I interview that comes to work at the coffee shop for me that I am a sole owner of this organization, but I have 3 kids and a mom that works at the coffee shop every morning. She volunteers. I don't pay her, but she comes in and bakes and gives me her opinions and feedback every morning on things that I'm doing there. And I just say to them, if you don't want to be in that environment, then this isn't going to be the job for you. But if you're comfortable knowing that, like, as a family, we don't always get along. And there are times that I'm upset with them and I try to leave it at home. But when we get to the shop, it doesn't mean that tension doesn't still exist or that something isn't there. And I'll be mindful of it. But, you know, I can't continue to spin all the plates and have all the relationships and all the people in my world and try to keep them in these silos. They merge together, they blend. That's the only way I feel like I'm able to have that balance and be successful, is to try to kind of pull it all together. And so if I would have taken an approach to try to silo everything and only look at email for one for like a set time and then another, maybe from an organization standpoint, I'd be more effective because they tell you multitasking isn't effective. But that doesn't work for me and everything that I have going on. So I just am straight with everybody that it's all going to blend together, and I'll do my best to be aware and mindful of it. And I will try to, decrease the chaos, but it is going to be. So even my personal relationships, Saturday I had to work at the shop and my boyfriend was in town and I enticed him to come to the coffee shop and a breakfast sandwich. And then when he got there, we had just had a huge rush and I didn't have a plate clean. So I smiled and went, will you please go do dishes? And, sent him to the kitchen. And he's like, I just came for a sandwich. Wait a second. But yeah, but hey, you had to earn that sandwich. But that's just how, that's just how I'm able to do it. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you won't hear from somebody else and maybe they've gotten really good at it. I personally have just found it's better to be transparent and kind of communicate that my world's all mesh and that I've got flexibility, but I don't necessarily have freedom in the choices that I've made.
So my perspective, if you would have asked this question 7, 8, 10 years ago, and we did, I think the answer we typically got was much more idealistic of,
Okay.
yes, I plan to, or I do separate and silo.
Yeah.
What I repetitively hear now is more of what you're saying is that that's not the reality of it. And so I think we've evolved on this. People who live a very fast lifestyle or have multiple things going on. And so I think you're probably, it's a realistic view and it's more healthy probably, and it's what most people would say. One of our speakers a couple weeks ago said, you have one life and you don't have these separate lives, it's just one life and it all blends together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great answer. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, kind of a crazy question for you here. Probably not your current employer, but thinking about past organizations you've worked with or for.
Okay.
If you owned them, what is one thing you would do differently?
Oh, man.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I encounter it even where I work now. Like, I think that happens everywhere is you have that experience or that knowledge and you think how you could apply it to your current situation to make those improvements. From an HR standpoint, it always comes back to every organization hires me and I am attracted to joining their team because they tell me they want to change. They tell me they want engaged employees, they want to reduce turnover, they want a culture where people enjoy coming to work and they don't avoid Mondays. Every single employer ever does that. And I join and I assess and I start making small changes. But when I get to the point that I'm like, okay, now it's time for you to change. You need to lead differently in order to get the results that you're expecting from people. That when the pain point, that's when they push back. They tend to not want to spend the money or change their behaviors that are ultimately having a negative impact in the organization. And so I think if I come back to them, it's with a mirror to say, great, I can do all of these things, but I need your commitment to be willing to change. I think I have figured that out about my human resources career, and I have started to have that dialogue up front. And with my current position and leader, we have very frank conversations, and there is that accountability, and he will own things that for example, it's a chaotic organization. We have a lot going on all the time, and he's now started saying, I think I'm part of the chaos. because he constantly does it. You know, he'll go have a meeting, he'll get a great idea, he'll come back to the leadership team and he'll be like, okay, now go implement this. And then we're like, wait a second, you had us doing this. And so he's understood. So I think that self-awareness, but really it's when somebody is saying to me they want something to be different, it's finding out what they're willing to do to have that change occur.
And leadership, it really starts and stops with leadership. I mean,
Yes.
you can do all the right things, say all the right things, and if leadership doesn't champion it, support it, it won't take life.
Yep.
So.
Did I answer
Very
that
cool.
very unique question?
Yeah, and it sounds like your career experiences leading up to this have really helped your current role inform that.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's the self-awareness. It's understanding why you leave a job and wait a second, do you continue to see a pattern in the reason why you were dissatisfied and you needed to make a change and you can't seem to find what works? It's a lot of turning it around on yourself and internally looking at things to help evaluate, like, after so many dissatisfied opportunities, is it the opportunity or is it the way you're approaching it?
Yeah, and you think about from a leadership standpoint. I mean, this is an entrepreneurship class, but it's relevant because if you're talking about engaged employees, you're talking about innovation. You're talking about they're constantly looking for better ways to do things. And so it is relevant. Most of you won't own a business. Some of you will. Some of you may down the road. We plant some seeds today. You're thinking about it, but it may be a while. But it's relevant because all of you will influence people in one way or another. And is it positive? Is it negative? Does it create chaos? All those kinds of things are things you want to be thinking about. If you could share one piece of advice to the future generation of leaders and entrepreneurs, what would that be? Dramatic pause.
Yeah, big thought here. If I shared one piece of advice, I already kind of gave you my little entrepreneurship is flexibility. It's not freedom. So I think it's important to have that. I think there's been a theme from what I've shared today that's kind of been an aha moment for me is how that internal reflection or looking internally has led to maybe overcoming some of those obstacles and barriers. So it's not to say it's always your fault and it's always something that you're doing. No, sometimes you work for a crappy employer and you need to leave. Or, you know, sometimes you had a business idea, but it didn't pan out the way that you thought it was going to be. But I think there's a healthy balance of holding ourselves accountable and really investing in like that getting to know ourselves and our strengths and weaknesses and going at it with transparency. Vulnerability is huge. And I think sometimes we're afraid to say or admit this isn't a strength of ours, or we may not be successful because of this. And it's just that self-awareness and an investment in knowing yourself. And, I'm sitting here today after 5 years of having a therapist and all the behavioral assessments and leadership training and so much has led to this point. When I was sitting in your seat, I did not have the same perspective. I did not have the same knowledge and information. And, I think I was much more hesitant to admit I didn't know something because then I saw that as such a weakness. And I didn't share everything, and that transparency didn't exist. So we've all evolved and we've normalized it, but I would say it's also super important to continue to have that awareness about yourself and know you change. And that's okay too,
All right, let's try this picture.
Okay.
Before we take questions. So, are you a good selfie person?
No.
Okay, you're up. You're what do we use? Your phone or mine?
It does not matter.
Well,
I think mine's laying over
Okay,
there.
we'll use yours because
Okay.
it might be a little easier. Mine a little tough, so. You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You up for the challenge?
So is this like a stand in front of the room and hold
with
the
everybody in the back.
the arm out? I'm just short,
Okay, I got it.
so you might have longer arms.
Boom.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. Okay. All right, questions? Questions for Tiara? Yes.
As somebody who's not naturally a risk taker,
Mhm.
what advice would you have given yourself if you hadn't gotten that funding from Delaware County, but still wanting to pursue having that business? So what actions would you have taken if you didn't have those connections with like networking?
Specific to funding, if I would not have received the loan that I did, I think, one thought that never occurred to me is taking on a business partner. Getting someone else to believe in my idea and having them support me through that journey. It could have been a lot easier to go that way. And when I say, like, I didn't even have my husband at the time get into his 401k, I didn't even think to ask him to make a sacrifice to help me in my dream, because it was my dream and I was trying to mitigate the risk and the impact. And I remember once my son, he's now a junior here at Ball State, he was like, well, what if this isn't successful? That's going to be really embarrassing. Like, he was afraid I would fail and it would somehow like shine a light on him. And I remember thinking like, oh, I didn't even, that didn't even dawn on me. That just added to the pile of concern there. So I would say to look at who's supporting you in your journey, who thinks you have a good idea, who's buying into that idea, and it's okay to consider letting them into the dream and how they can help you. Now, on the flip side, I'm also somebody that I don't think I would have worked well with a partner, because I was very much, this is the way I want it done, and this is the way I see it going. And in order to have a successful partnership, I would have had to have taken their advice, listened to their advice, had buy-in on some of the decisions that I made. So where I chose the harder path in independence, I ultimately only had myself to either congratulate or blame in the end. So they're just not a big risk taker. I would say it's okay to share the risk. Find somebody that wants to share that risk with you. I've had people approach me about doing a vintage shop and a coffee shop all in one. That might be a partnership. I mean, it might be a completely different business, but somehow you blend. Like, I'd love a book shop with a coffee shop in it, kind of like Barnes and Noble, but totally different in its own personal way. But I say to myself, I don't know crap about buying books. So if I would want to pursue that, I'd either have to learn how to do it, or I'd have to find that bookstore that would want to have that partnership. That's what I think I would have done.
You mentioned that you were like one of like 4 people pitching a coffee shop idea.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think you made your idea stand out?
I took an approach, and again, remember, it was all resourcefulness because I didn't have any money, of repurposing and reusing and basically taking a bank and saying, hey, I want to make this bank into what part of the dream. And I incorporated the original drive up to be the original teller window is now my drive up. So I took into consideration what they wanted from this concept. They wanted a place for people to get food and drinks. It was a food desert. There wasn't a lot of options in the area. And they also wanted community and building and bringing residents kind of together. So I took into consideration what they wanted to achieve and what I wanted the vision to be, and tried to blend and highlight in my pitch what I thought aligned. It's the same thing in organizations when I want. So, for example, a recent example is my current leader, wanted to do something for the holidays and bringing people together. And we just launched an internal store that has like logoed gear. And so when I had this conversation with him and I was like, hey, I want you to give gift certificates away to the store to all of our associates, he immediately calculated how much that was going to cost him. And I was like, yep, I hear you. But when will you make that $16,000 investment and also have branding and marketing and people walking around in your gear and exposure to your brand? Like you kind of figure out what is their drivers, what do they want to achieve, and then you help them to see that vision by adapting your story. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I don't know who I competed against necessarily. I don't know what their pitch consisted of and what their story was. I just tried to adapt mine to theirs. But again, making sure I didn't compromise on what I actually wanted to achieve.
So you spoke his language a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. Questions?
So you talked a bit about people pleasing and like crowd pleasing. How do you not fall into the trap of people pleasing and crowd pleasing in your personal life and in your professional life?
So I think that it's an ongoing challenge. I have not mastered it. I think it's when I feel like I stop and ask myself the question, am I doing this because I want to and because it aligns with the direction that I want to take something? Or am I compromising and doing it because I'm getting pressure and somebody wants me to do it? So I'm always kind of doing that little check-in. I also, in the business world, I evaluate, does this impact my competitive advantage? For example, if every person who comes through my drive up asks if I have Coke or a soda, I specifically do not have that because there is a gas station 2 doors down. And your 99 cents at the gas station, they can give it to you at a better price point. Their volume is so much higher than what mine would be. What it would cost me to run the lines, to maintain the equipment, and what I would have to charge you for that Coke, you would be dissatisfied. And so when I kind of walk myself through financially, it just does not make good business sense to offer to people what they want. That gives me comfort in being able to kind of say, I'm sorry, that's not something that I can do. And so then I always look at like telling the why. So for example, we talked about feedback. My employees share ideas with me all the time. I don't just say no. I walk them through the bigger picture of why I can't, or I say, that's a good idea, tell me more. This is the information I'm going to need to be able to make that decision. So sometimes it's my risk averseness and my attention to detail that, also kind of help me with that, being able to. I would say one area that I still try to stay totally neutral on is politics. Religion, politics, those sensitive subjects. There are businesses who have been very successful because they do communicate what that is, and people support them in alignment with it. That is just one area that I am still not at all comfortable with, so I don't put it out there. I try to stay Switzerland and not necessarily communicate. That could be hurting my business because people can make assumptions, and they're always going to make assumptions no matter what you put out there. You make an assessment of how you think I am based on how I stand in front of you or how I presented or spoke or what I wore. There's so many things you cannot control. Understanding that those assumptions are happening, I would also just say, I do still avoid certain topics. And to me, that's important. Like I just got interviewed by the Star Press last Saturday, and they were talking about the tariffs and the impact to coffee. I am well aware that it is definitely impacting, but I am not going to go on record telling you whether I support it or not from a political standpoint. I will talk to you about the facts and that, yes, my coffee prices are increasing and ways that I am navigating that, but I am not going to tell you my belief about the individual, dictating those directions.
Questions?
How would you say that interacting with the community affects your business?
Oh, yeah. So it was a big part of my reasoning and wanting to do it. I tell a story every interview, it feels like, in the beginning. With when I moved back to Muncie from living in Indy, I lived up in Boone County. Boone County was growing, and there was all kinds of development and all kinds of new houses being built, and it was just in growth mode. And when we moved back here, my son Xander said to me, "It's so sad here." And we were driving through the south side of Muncie. And I looked at it from his perspective and was like, holy cow, yeah, I took him from this new, everything shiny, pretty to like, oh, the businesses have gone out of town. The homes are not being maintained. Like, if I'm in his little world looking out, like, what did you do to me, Mom? And so then my question to him was, you're absolutely right, buddy. What do you think we can do? Like, how do we make a difference in that? And so that stuck with me. And then when I decided to open this business, I could have gone anywhere, could have done it anywhere, still can. But it was important to me to have that South Side relationship and impact because I wanted to make it a better place. I wanted to contribute and do my part. I have served on the 812 board. I have hosted a radio show for them. I ran their business unit of trying to incubate new businesses. I was actually an award winner, not me specifically, but Rosebud for our community engagement and impact by the Innovation Center. They presented us an award. It was a great honor. It's super important to give back and to make a difference and not just complain or pick at what we don't like about something. I'm a big believer in identify it, but then try to fix it. And what can you do about it? And like we mentioned earlier, relationships are huge and how you're engaging with that community. I could do so much more. And I am the first to admit, I do what I can at my limits. Like, for example, when you open a small business, everybody is going to come to you that's doing a fundraiser or a drive of some kind, and they're going to want you to donate, and they're going to want you to give money, and they're going to, if you keep handing it out, the hands will keep stretching for more. You're going to have to figure out, okay, who do I want to partner with and support? What aligns with the mission and what I'm trying to achieve here? And then that's who you can support, because you can't support everybody. You don't have the time, energy, and money to be able to do that. And so you're selective about your partnerships, but they are very important because those people are the ones that are coming and ordering coffee. They're driving across town to come see me when it would be much easier to stop at the 3 places that they passed. So you see it kind of paying you back, but I would say because there's so much need out there, you're going to have to figure out who can you support that aligns with what you're trying to achieve, and where's that likeness to be able to do that.
They just don't realize that vault room is a meeting room and not full of money anymore. Right?
It is not, no.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. In the old bank, she has a room that was the vault, and now it's a meeting room. You can sign up, reserve space for it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Who has a question? So, Tiara, one of the things that we do in this class, every class session, they're probably tired of it. But I'm a big believer in closing the loop. And so every class they turn in an index card. You could probably see them.
Okay.
There are 3 key insights and 1 golden nugget.
Oh.
And so one of the things that we've been doing, I think it just kind of happened like our first or second speaker this semester, and where the students were sharing some really thoughtful things, and so we were taking the names off, but we were sharing with our guest. You know, it's kind of a gift to you, so you
Yeah.
be on the lookout for that.
Okay.
So, because I think sometimes we don't realize the impact we have, and
Yeah.
it's nice to get that.
I love that. That's
So,
such a thank you.
positive feedback.
Yeah, to feel like you did contribute in some
Yeah.
way.
All right, so be with me in thanking Tiara for her visit today, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.